Intel's currently in a very rough spot. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. From CPUs which are basically cooking themselves, to nosediving stock amidst other corporation issues, the past couple of months for Intel haven't exactly been great. But despite all of that, I'm still going to stick with my 13700K in my workstation, and I'm going to tell you why in today's video. So if you've been out of the loop for a while, Intel's 13th and 14th generation CPUs have been plagued by instability problems. This affects any CPU which is at least 65 watts in TDP, which is basically every single i5, i7 and i9 processor. And what's causing these problems is oxidization on a microscopic level within the silicon itself, and a microcode bug which was causing the CPUs to call for more voltage than what they really needed. Both of these factors combined caused instability problems, which was irreversible, particularly on i9 processors. Personally, on my 13700K, I haven't noticed any instability, and it's been pretty much rock solid for me. And I've extensively used my 13700K daily for about a year and a half now, and it's rock solid still. But with all this sort of drama, I suspect if you didn't upgrade from an older like 12th generation CPU, you're going to be happy, because these issues seemingly do not affect 12th generation Intel CPUs. So even if you've got a 12900KS, you're laughing because these don't have the problems, at least as of now. My honest opinion on this whole drama sort of fiasco is I believe it's overblown by people farming clicks on sites like Twitter and YouTube. By no means am I saying there aren't any issues with 13th and 14th generation Raptor Lake CPUs, because there are. And by no means am I discrediting those who have faced issues, because let's be honest, these processors, they certainly aren't cheap, and I can see a lot of people getting annoyed by potential sort of failures and instability. But I do think this whole situation has been slightly overblown by a few people, and I suspect those who have actually run into issues have managed to get an RMA fully sort of sorted, I suppose. But if you've heard otherwise, let me know in the comments down below. I'd like to hear your stories if you've had to RMA an Intel CPU because of the instability issues. At the start of the video, I said I won't be swapping out my 13700K anytime soon, and it's simply down to a singular reason, and that is it's the best for my job. I spend most of my time editing videos and photos in that order, and for my video files, which are H.264 Sony A7 footage, which you're watching right now, Intel processors with the iGPU are simply the best for this task. Here, the integrated graphics are very good at decoding and encoding H.264 footage, and this drastically speeds up my editing process. This allows for a much snappier editing experience in Adobe Premiere Pro, and Intel processors do outperform their Ryzen counterparts on average, especially with H.264 and H.265 codecs. As for photo editing in Adobe Lightroom Classic, I edit Sony ARW RAW files, which are about, I'd like to say 50 megabytes in size, even though they're compressed, they're quite big. But here, Intel does still enjoy a performance advantage over Ryzen processors. The performance gap does close slightly compared to Adobe Premiere Pro. However, Intel for my workload here is reigning supreme still. And that is why I'm not going to be upgrading, well, it would be more of a downgrade if anything, to something like a 7950X or an upcoming 9950X. Gaming is a whole different story. I don't even have Steam or Epic Games installed on this editing machine here, and that's why I have an AM5 based gaming rig. AMD is objectively a better bet if you're purely using your PC for gaming. Here they enjoy a performance benefit with the 7800X3D, which is objectively the best gaming CPU in the world right now, and it will also do this while consuming a lot less power and potentially being quite a bit more stable. For me, it's a no-brainer to choose AMD for a purely gaming focused build. Why would you choose an Intel CPU which uses a lot more power and overall gets less performance than something like a 7800X3D? It just doesn't make sense to me, as Intel's biggest advantage now is productivity. By no means am I saying that Intel processors are useless for gaming, they're certainly not. I used the game on this 13700K and the performance was very good with an RTX 3080, but my biggest problem with this was its power consumption and its heat output. This thing was gaming all day at like 80 to 90 degrees C depending on the game, and yeah, that's not good by any means. But if you were looking for a dual workstation gaming PC, Intel's a bit more valid here, especially with the new microcode update. You shouldn't be running into any more problems with these CPUs, but if you were purely just gaming, keep it to Team Red. It's not the initial instability problems that annoy me with this whole situation, because how a company deals with said troubles and problems is a much better gauge of how good of a company they actually are. After all, it's a matter of when, not if, when problems arise, as problems are inevitable with anything, and to say that Intel mishandled this would be a bit of a understatement, let's be honest. They took months to even acknowledge the issue, as initial reports of instability were in April to around May time, and they only put an announcement out in July, towards the end of July in fact. I think it was the 22nd. So it took them quite a while to even put their hands up to say, yeah, sorry, we screwed up. So the way that they've dealt with this isn't necessarily the best way to do it. Luckily, they are extending warranties, as they should, because they messed up at the end of the day, but is it enough? And they've also put out the microcode update, which launched earlier this month, so it is a step in the right direction. Is it a band-aid fix? Probably. I'm not too sure. I haven't really delved into the microcode update. All I've done is just install it on my PC, and everything seems the same, so hopefully my CPU won't cook itself, but time will tell. Honestly though, I think if Intel held up their hands much sooner than what they did, around like a week or two after the initial reports, I don't think this situation would be as controversial as what it is, but what's been done's been done, I suppose. Enough of looking into the past, it's time to look into the future. I'll be following Intel's upcoming Arrow Lake CPUs very closely, and I'm hoping to score some samples of them, but to be honest, I'm not going to hold my breath with that. Regardless, this is going to be a clean slate for Intel to do the right thing. Please release a CPU generation which is free from controversy and which is actually power efficient. Initial rumours are pointing towards they're going to have a reduction of 100 watts in power consumption compared to Raptor Lake, which is a very good sign if that's true. That's something I want to see, because my biggest issue with Raptor Lake is their power consumption. They use a lot of power. Whether you're an AMD or Intel fan, having two competent CPU manufacturers making brilliant products is great for the industry. Competition is great for us consumers, as it gives us a lot of things to choose from, and they will want to get one up on each other. Well, look at this sort of fiasco and look what AMD has released with Zen 5. Zen 5's not particularly brilliant in any stretch of the imagination. Similar to what Intel were doing when they had no competition from AMD. See what I'm getting at? So, my 13700K isn't going anywhere for the time being, as it's doing its job, and it's doing its job well. And with that microcode update, hopefully it won't be cooking itself to an early grave. So if you want to see how I built this PC here, you can watch it in a video up there. With that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.